Etta for getting upset that my wife told me a trashy college story? Original post. Yesterday was hanging out with my wife and friends, joking around and telling stories. My wife's friend Sarah asked me, has your wife ever told you about how she made two guys have a UFC match? My wife is like, OMG, shut up. And they go back and forth until I say I want to hear the story. My wife says it's so dumb and I'm gonna hate it, but I'm too curious at this point, so I insist she tells me about this. She sighs and says she will. So my wife says basically I was at this college party and these two guys were hitting on me hard. And like they were kinda getting competitive and a little aggressive towards each other. So I told them if they fought each other one-on-one I would go home with the winner. Her friends are dying laughing and Sarah's dumbass is saying, don't forget to tell him how you made them fight in their underwear, ha ha ha. WTF. I was shocked. I asked my wife if she actually went through with this, and she's like, you mean did I sleep with the winner? Yes, to be honest. She can see I'm stunned, so she reminds me I beg to hear it. Later on that night, when it's just us two, I tell her about how disappointed I am. That was a gross story, and she shouldn't be laughing about it or telling anybody. She reminds me that I wanted to hear it, but I thought it would be normal crazy college story. Not, whatever the fuck this was. We argue about it for half an hour, but she refuses to apologize. So I decide to sleep in the guest room. This story was trashy. I thought I deserved an apology for having to hear it. They shouldn't be joking about it. Etta or is my wife? YTA. I get that this may have been a shocking story to you, but you did ask repeatedly to hear it. That's on you, and she does not need to apologize for telling you. As my dad always told me, don't ask a question if you aren't prepared to hear the answer. Now, you really need to dig into why the details of the story bother you so much and have that conversation in a non-judgmental way. Calling her, or her actions, trashy with the tone of disdain you've used in your post isn't going to get you anywhere but divorce court. I insist she tells me about this. I deserved an apology for having to hear it. Does that help put into perspective why YTA? You insisted, she obliged, and now you're upset at her for telling you? It's your own damn fault for being pushy and ignoring her no. Get off your high horse, dude. If anyone should be apologizing, it's you. Her past is the past. If you want to stay part of her future, you need to start having some more respect for her. YTA dude. Number one rule of life is don't ask questions you aren't prepared for the answer to. You put her in a lose-lose situation. If she didn't tell you, you'd be mad, and now that she did, you are calling her trashy? How dare you? Everyone has a past. Unless she was a nun, there was going to be some story that made you uncomfortable, so get over yourself. Go apologize to your wife before she realizes she deserves better than you. But if you're so bothered by it, divorce her so that she can find a man secure in himself to not feel insecure about what his wife did in college before they even met or dated. After reading this story and the comments to it, I agree that the guy should have been prepared for such a turn of events. If you are too gentle, then you do not need to demand to tell such stories. But at the same time, I can understand the guy and I feel very sorry for him because he loves this girl very much and this story was a strong blow for him. Well, let's wish them good luck and we move on to the next story. AITA for telling my son I want no contact? Original post. Me, 45 male, and my ex-wife got together in our teenage years. Got married at 21 and had our son at 22. After our son was born, we slowly started to drift away. When our son was about 11 or 12, I decided to pull the plug on my marriage. I don't know why, but my wife was very shocked. By that time, we already had dead bedroom for about 4 years and haven't had any deep discussion for about the same time. I was just done. I took about a week for me to move out, and all this time my ex cried all the time, begging me to stay. But I stood my ground. My son was very angry at me and wouldn't talk to me at all. I understood why. In his eyes, I was hurting his mother. When I finally moved out, he didn't want to see me at all. I tried really hard, came regularly to see him, but he always told me he hates me and ran to his room. I was devastated. The divorce was finalized in about a year. Custody was in place for 50-50. We got my son in therapy, but it just didn't help. He hated my guts to the core. I never wanted to force him to go to my place. I could, but didn't want him to resent me even more. I still wanted to be there for him, went to his games, sent him birthday and Christmas gifts, but he shut me out completely. Last thing he told me is that he doesn't want me at his events anymore. I went to my ex house a couple of times, but she always told me that he doesn't want to see me and that she wouldn't make him. At this point, I was cut off completely. I found myself on a long dark road of depression and pain. It was like my son died. The lowest point of my life. But one day I woke up and was just done. I rebounded and have since moved on. I met my wife and we have 2 beautiful kids. Life was great again. Until about a year ago, when I got email from my son. He apologized for everything. That he recently got a child and started reflecting and realized how horrible he was to me. He wanted to reconnect and be in my life again. There was much more in email, but I don't want to share for privacy reasons. I didn't feel anything when I read this mail. I didn't respond. Since then, he sent about 15 emails detailing what is happening in his life and his kid. I never responded, but I figured I at least owe him some kind of closure. I didn't send it yet. It goes, "Dear son, I would appreciate it if you stopped sending me emails. I went through hell and back to be at this point in my life. I have a family again, and I'm very happy right now. I understand you have regrets and some guilt about the past, but I hold no resentment towards you and I forgive you. Bringing you back into my life would introduce complications I am not willing to face for my own good and that of my family. I simply cannot give you what you seek. I want no further contact. I hope you understand and wish you all the best in your life." I didn't send it yet and finally told my wife what is happening. She read all the emails and my draft and was horrified. She begged me to not send it and opened my heart for him. We argued and a demand for therapist came up. She even told my parents, and my mom went nuclear. She started berating me like I was a little kid again. I don't know why she doesn't understand. She was with me all this time and saw what I went through. In the end, she told me if I did this to him, she will do the same to me. I was speechless. I don't even know what I seek here. I went through similar stories here, and a lot of the comments were not nice to people in my position. I don't know. Maybe I am a prick and need to hear it. Wife is horrified at the idea you could do this to your child. She is likely imagining you as suddenly capable of turning your back on the children you currently have with her. There is no way to put the cat back in the bag. OP, you do not get to continue on in your happy life without immediately addressing this in the many ways you've been advised. I'm sorry for everything you've gone through and what is to come, but I'm hopeful for a positive end. Life is very short and he was a hurt child. Please learn to forgive. Learn to give perfectly reasonable second chances. Brother. My dude. Go to therapy with your kid. He was 12. Life is fucking rough when your parents get divorced at 12. I am sorry he hurt you, and you hurt him. It's a rough situation, but fully cutting him off like that is most likely the wrongest thing to do with this. Your partner's reaction is pretty justified. I would probably seek the nearest cliff to fling myself off of if I got that message from my father. NAH, go see your kid and start working on the bond. You guys might discover something you both love, and if not, you tried again. You can walk away again. After reading this story, I was shocked that such situations occur in families. It seems to me that the people in the comments are right. Life is very short, and in his place I would start to establish a relationship with my son. After all, nothing bad will happen and at any moment he will be able to leave. And we don't say goodbye and move on to the final and even more interesting story. AITA for blocking a man after he bought me a $500 plus dinner? Original post. I was invited on a date and he asked me, "What's your favorite restaurant?" My honest answer was my favorite place is a bit much for a first date, but I did still tell him about it because, well, I thought he was cool and I truly love the place, so I tell everyone about so they'll go. I want them to stay booked and busy so they'll stay open so I can keep going. I said that for a first date we could go somewhere more casual like this cool Mexican spot between us that has over 300 tequilas in their tequila library but is still pretty cheap when it comes to food. Amazing tacos with handmade tortillas. But ultimately, he wanted to pick. I was trying to be helpful and make suggestions. Also, we live in different parts of a big city with terrible traffic that's extremely car dependent. My favorite restaurant, on the other hand, is about $500 for two. I take myself there sometimes after personal accomplishments or just for a treat. Sometimes I go just to have one of their James Beard Award-winning cocktails, LOL bougie AF I know, and some apps. Well, this gentleman, upon researching the menu, decides this is where he wants to take me for dinner. He really wanted to try it out. Of course I agree. Despite the price point, it's actually a pretty chill spot, don't have to dress up, and is a great date spot, even a first date spot, if you're in a different tax bracket than me, but, as much as I knew, he could be. For me, first dates are usually inexpensive, considering you don't know the person and the conversation is much more important than the meal. We have apps. We have drinks. We have dinner. We have conversation. We have dessert. We have a good time, from my perspective. This means we ran up a serious bill. Pay time comes. We do the check dance, sort of. Of course, since it's a first date, I say, oh, separate checks. Not that I don't pay on subsequent dates, I just mean that first time when you don't know if a guy thinks if a woman pays that means she's uninterested. He also says separate checks, so cool, we're on the same page. Basically at the same time. As in our words overlapped. I won't lie, I hesitated and said it after he was saying it, because he asked me out and also insisted we went there after he read the menu and really wanted to try the food. I really want to describe menu items, but it's one of those places that's so specific, and also the chef uses what's local and in season, so I'd kind of be revealing too much info. So our separate checks come, no problem by me. I put my card down, he puts his down. When our server comes back to grab them, he takes my card, gives her both the checks, says he'd covering it all, looks at my card intensely. It's not that I think he's some numbers savant where he was stealing my info by looking at my card, though I have bartended for years and a dumbass/genius who worked with me could memorize card numbers at a glance and then use them for online purchases till he finally got a felony. And it wasn't even his little comment of, oh, now I finally know your last name, which I of course wouldn't tell him before. It was the game he played. He invited me on a date, so I assumed he was paying. He then said separate checks, making sure I knew I was paying for myself. Then he grabbed the checks and paid it all, annoying the server and me. I'm feeling like this was a shit test to see if I would pony up to a $250 plus each restaurant bill. I felt like he was checking to see if I was a gold digger or something, even though I'd literally told him we shouldn't go there the first date. The place I suggested we could have had tacos and tequila flights for less than $50. So, after I said thank you for dinner, I got in my Uber, left, blocked him. I told one of my friends this story today, laughing, and they told me I was actually the villain in the story. NTA. His vibe made you feel uncomfortable. His actions showed that he plays games and oversteps boundaries. It doesn't sound like the right fit for you. There is nothing wrong with telling him your favorite restaurant. There is nothing wrong with how much it costs. You showed you were in no way a gold digger trying to get him to pay for an expensive meal when you said you shouldn't go to that restaurant, and again when you offered to pay. Please don't let comments here or on your date make you doubt yourself. The fact he knew why you were withholding your last name and seemed to manipulate the situation to win somehow is deeply concerning. He may not be a stalker, but he shows a flagrant disrespect for your boundary. Glaring red flag number 1, AMD, a total lack of understanding about why a woman needs to have safety concerns that men simply don't need. I would have blocked, too. And probably more than just blocked. If someone stares that hard at my card, I'd cancel it and order a replacement after the date. In case he turns out to be a scammer. Also, his behavior is off-putting. NTA. And what would you do in these 3 cases? Write your opinion about these stories in the comments. I will read them with pleasure. Subscribe to the channel. I love you.